friends, and welcome to All By My Shelf. I'm Miss Rachel, and it's so nice to see you. Today's panel is Here Comes Treble. 5 amazing YA authors are here to talk to you about music in their books. Those authors are Eric Smith, Lauren Gibaldi, Jae-Jones, Julia Ember, and Cynthia Salaysay. If you're a Glenside patron, make sure you click the link in the description marked Glenside, which will take you to a document telling you all of the available e-copies you can check out right now. If you're someone who prefers hard copies, you can fill out the form that I've added there for you and tell me exactly which book you would like me to put on hold for you when the library is able to reopen. I hope you enjoy this panel. Okay, hi friends, welcome to our Here Comes Treble Music in YA panel. If you all could introduce yourselves and a little bit about your musical books, that would be great.
Perhaps we should just go alphabet. I'll start. My name is Jae-Jones. I go by JJ. I am the author of the books Winter Song and Shadow Song from Wednesday Books. And they are about an aspiring young composer whose sister gets stolen by the Goblin King.
Julia, you want to go?
So my music book is Ruin Song, which is coming out in November. And it is a queer Phantom of the Opera loose retelling about a girl who is a music mage, and she just wants to be a healer, but unfortunately her power is such that she's caught the eye of the queen, and she's been forced into torturing people for the queen.
So cheery. Cynthia, you want to go?
Sure. My name's Cynthia Salaysay, and I live in Oakland, California. My book, Private Lessons, is coming out from Candlewick in May, and it's a coming-of-age story about a young girl who wants to be a competitive pianist. And so she gets under the tutelage of this elite, fancy piano teacher, and as she struggles for his approval, she starts to lose herself. So it's a book about finding your voice as both like a young woman and also as an artist.
Awesome. And then Lauren and Eric, you want to talk about that Battle of the Bands?
Yay! Yeah, I guess I'll go first really quick. So my name's Eric Smith. I'm an agent and a young adult author, and my music book is co-edited with the amazing Lauren Gibaldi over there. It's called Battle of the Bands, and it's an anthology. Lauren, do you want to talk a little bit more about it?
Sure. It's coming out in 2021, also with Candlewick, and it's about a one-night battle of the bands at a high school, and all of the stories interweave. So each story is about a different band performing or support person. Like my story is a stage manager. Eric has a story about one of the performers, and all the stories go together. So it's one fun night, and I'm so excited that it's coming out and I get to work with Eric on it.
Amazing. So since this is a music panel, I wanted to talk about your sort of use of music in your writing life as opposed to like specifically on the page for you. So do you use music while you're drafting? Do you make like Spotify playlists? Do you use it maybe as like a sort of like auditory outlining type thing? Or do you just like need absolute silence when you're doing any of those things? Like you can't have any words at all anywhere in your brain. Anyone can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I do. Yeah, absolutely. So with I guess for a good example is Don't Read the Comments. My last book shifts back and forth from Philadelphia to like Jersey City and Hoboken. And I kept listening to music that reminded me of those places while I was working on it. I'd been living in Michigan at the time. So whenever I'm writing, I try to listen to music that sort of sets me in whatever it is I'm working on. In the case of Don't Read the Comments, I was listening to a lot of the Wonder Years and the early November, Hidden in Plain View, and just lots of like pop punk and emo from both of those areas. And then once in a while, Bruce Springsteen would like sneak his way into those lists.
Of course.
I think Eric and I work well together because we have the same music taste. So I write quiet. I can't, if I'm listening to music, I start singing along, and that doesn't help with writing because it'll like just, I'll write lyrics. But what I do is I have about a half-hour drive to work every day. So I'm a librarian as well as a writer. So I listen to music that'll inspire the book while I drive. So for my first book, The Night We Said Yes, it starts with, it was inspired by a song from the band Stars, Set Yourself on Fire. And it started with that. And then I went to all of the songs I liked in high school. So I don't write about when I was in high school, but I use the music to kind of put me in that mindset of being 16. So it's a lot of the Ataris and Blink-182 and all of those favorites from the early 2000s, late 90s.
Are we all of a similar age? Are we all going to have like the same music touchstones?
It's possible.
I guess I'll go. When I'm actually in front of my computer and writing, I need absolute silence. I cannot, even if it's instrumental music, I find that way too distracting for me to really work in that way. But I do use music a lot. In a similar way to Lauren and Eric, I will listen to, I'm constantly listening to music, new music, old music, things that I like, and songs that will remind me of characters or a scene I will kind of make note of. And then I actually use playlists probably most in the revision process, partially as a procrastinatory technique, but also partially I have already collected all these songs that remind me of the book that I'm working on, and then I sort of edit a playlist that to me sort of follows the emotional trajectory of the book that I'm writing. So that's kind of the way I use it. But like when I'm butt in chair, hands on keyboard, dead silence. Like I can't have anything.
Yeah.
I also use music to sort of set my emotional tone. So I'll listen to a song that reflects the emotion of the scene before I start, because I'm one of those writers that like if I'm not sort of feeling what my characters are feeling, then it ends up really, really flat. I can't like kind of wing it in that way. So if I'm writing a sad scene, I'll listen to really sad music. If I'm trying to write something happy, my go-to right now is the Witcher song, like the really catchy toss a coin to your Witcher, because it just like puts me in kind of a jaunty mood, and I'll listen to that. And then when I'm actually writing, I do listen to instrumental music. I listen to a lot of like the instrumental versions of epic fantasy films. So a lot of Lord of the Rings, a lot of Witcher, a lot of things like that.
I'm kind of like JJ and also like Julia. I also listen to music to set tone. There's a lot of Chopin in my book, and so I was listening to a lot of Chopin, which for me, I think emulated a lot of the emotional tone of my character. She's very romantic and she's very passionate, and she's just like always like from the heart. So I spent a lot of time studying certain pieces and then reading as much as I could about those pieces, because I can't actually play them. So listen to them over and over and over again, and then read people's commentaries and listen to master classes. And yeah, but I'm the same way as JJ in that like when I'm revising, I like music to help me flow and to kind of keep it light, because if I get too deep into the revision, I might get too hard on myself, if that makes any sense. So I'll like on purpose like listen to something in the background. Sometimes it won't be music at all. It'll be the Gilmore Girls. So.
Nice. So this question was partially inspired by one of my library teens. So what has been sort of your musical journey, not writing related necessarily, just in general? Are there genres of music you have connected with consistently, or has your taste wildly fluctuated? And the inspiration was, I had a teen that had asked me at one point if I still liked all the same music I liked in high school. And the answer is I listened to musical theater, and I listened to musical theater then, and I don't really listen to anything else. And so, no, it hasn't changed. But I figure it's more interesting for people that have wider tastes than I do. So I was curious to know your answers to that.
I know I'm old when my music tastes have calcified around like when I came of age, essentially. So it's like, for me, it's like right around 2005. Like, that's where my music taste seems to have calcified and now has evolved into what I call mom music, which is like top 40 and easy listening. My musical journey, I guess, is I studied music for a very long time. I've been playing piano since I was 4. I studied opera. I play the flute and the guitar in just sort of a dilettante kind of way. I really love classical music. That was sort of my very first love, the thing I've studied. Really didn't have any consciousness of music maybe composed later than 1840 until I was like in 7th grade, and I started going to like middle school dances, and that's really when I started listening to basically what was modern at the time, like late 90s R&B and hip hop, things like that. But I think, and then I just started kind of exploring music all over the place. So I don't really have a specific genre that I actually really like country music. People always look at me weird when I say that, but I do. I love country music. I love the storytelling, and there's like 90s country music, which to me is like the golden age of country. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Now I'm just like listening to mom music.
It's funny, Rachel, when you started asking that question, I saw Lauren start laughing, and I think it's because she knows what I'm going to talk about. Because
Are you going to talk about ska?
I'm going to talk about ska.
I literally almost put a question in there that was like, Eric, can you define what ska is?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, my music journey in like high school and college was pop punk music and lots of like ska and ska punk, which is basically, you know, like if you gave Blink-182 like a horn section, suddenly there was a saxophone player or a trumpet player. Like that's my favorite way to explain it. But yeah, it was a little more complicated than that, I guess. I don't know. I'm not some ska purist. You're fine. But yeah, I played in ska bands all through high school and college. I even went on tour a couple of times. And
what was the name of your band, Eric?
What's that?
What was the name of your band?
Oh, that's a secret. No, they were called Last Picked, but I got to fill in on saxophone for like bands like Catch-22 and other cool groups. So it was fun. It was a good time.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then I kept listening to pop punk throughout the rest of my life, and I guess now I listen to select dad music.
Dad music.
Like, you know, I throw on Matchbox 20. I'll throw on some Light House, you know, put on some Gin Blossoms, and yeah. So it fluctuates from like ska to pop punk to late '90s, early 2000s alternative rock.
Perfect.
Like Rachel, I was also a musical theater nerd in both middle school and high school, and then all the way up through college, because I did BMR, which at my college was kind of like musicals, but like just the songs from like a million different musicals all like jammed into one performance. When I was in middle school, I did mostly backstage things, mostly because I was really, really shy in middle school, and was terrified to try out, even though I was taking vocal lessons since I was like 5. And so I didn't want to try out, and I didn't want to be on stage. But then I got more involved in actually being on stage when I was in high school and college, and met a lot of amazing friends through that. I lived in London when I was in middle school and then in high school, which is a huge musical theater scene, almost like New York. And I think like the experience of going to a lot of the musical theater productions in London and like sitting in a space that had functioned as a musical theater space for hundreds of years really like solidified my love of both like fantasy and like historically based fantasy and also music.
Nice. I was listening to a lot of commercial music, commercial radio when I was a kid, and but then I got really curious about other things, and I'd go into record stores and like I would listen to OMD and I'd be like, what is that? I need to have that. So I fell madly in love with OMD, and then I fell madly in love with They Might Be Giants, and then I fell madly in love with the Trash Can Sinatras. This is all like mid-90s type stuff, and then Slow Dive and a lot of shoegaze and the Stone Roses, and then from there just into college I started listening to a lot more world music. So from there it became like Fela Kuti and like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and Bob Marley and early Bob Marley. And yeah, I was always just trying to fall in love with something new. I didn't fall in love with people as much as I fell in love with music. So I was always like trying to find that fix and get really, really into things and get very nerdy about bands and get really nerdy about like the liner notes. And I would look at all the pictures in the liner notes and I would like fantasize myself in the liner notes. And yeah, that was my life when I was younger. But now I'm older. I'm pretty curious. I like all kinds of different things. I like a little bit of easy listening. I like Jason Mraz. I like Lizzo. I also like Angel Olsen and like, listen to a lot of indie stuff too. And yeah, whatever kind of gets me in the mood, I guess. Whatever makes me happy.
So I was raised by my parents who were big Donna Summer and Billy Joel fans. So that is what I knew for a good portion of my life. Until like high school. No, I learned other things. I knew pop music, whatever, but high school I discovered musical theater and that became my first love. I can't sing, but I was in the musicals. It was amazing, and I still follow all that and love it, which was my third book. And then I befriended Cinderella's father when we did Into the Woods, and he introduced me to the world of pop punk, and it was the best thing ever because that was like my way of finding myself in a world in high school. So I would go to all the shows and all that, and that's where I discovered your Alkaline Trio and Saves the Day and Safe Ferris, which is also Sky. I saw Real Big Fish. I loved it all. It was amazing. And I followed that through college, and that's kind of like where my music has stopped. I still listen to the same bands from high school and college and music theater. My musicals have expanded. I listen to the new ones, but band-wise, not so much. So I feel like I stopped there. I know, whatever's on the radio, and then I know I listen to a lot of Frozen 2 now because I have 2 daughters. So it's that and Moana, which is great music. And incidentally, they got super into the older TV show Yo Gabba Gabba, which was created by the Aquabats. So my pop punk knowledge came all the way around because all those bands were in it, and it's super cool seeing them now as a mom and having my daughter be able to sing Pool Party, which is adorable.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We love full circle moments.
Yes.
So sometimes I think we have ideas of what a particular medium is and what it can do, and that when you look closely, those ideas don't actually hold up. So we've seen this a lot with the sort of pushback against audiobooks as reading, and the people who are like, well, no, you have to like actually be holding a book to be actually reading, stuff like that. And so with music, which is really a sound-focused, it's sound-focused for the majority of folks, you guys have translated it so well onto the page. And so I'm wondering what the most difficult part of transferring a primarily auditory medium onto a written piece of paper is.
Well, for me, writing is an oral medium. It's not, I don't know, for me, I was trying to describe this to a friend, but it makes me sound not entirely sane, but I hear everything before it comes out onto the page. And literally everything is sound based. The character will talk to me, or the rhythm of how they walk. Everything does come down to sound. And I read absolutely everything I've written aloud, because the experience of reading something on the page and having it read aloud does change things. You hear pauses differently, you hear the rhythm differently, and even characterization can come across differently. So for me, it's always sound and then trying to, evoke emotion that way. I am not a visual writer at all. So people who are like, oh, I see my book as a movie first. And I was like, tell me more, because all of my books are bodiless voices and featureless rooms. And then I struggle to make everything else, because it's the sound experience first. And maybe that is because ever since I was a child, my parents read aloud to me. But it's actually just, I can't disentangle that. So
That's really cool.
Yeah. I feel like for me, the challenge is trying to describe like the feeling of hearing a certain song and the feeling of experiencing a certain song when like you can't really hear it on the page. In Battle of the Bands, my character hears a song and like falls to pieces, and the song doesn't exist. It's not a real song. It's something we made up in the book. So I had to like listen to like Motorcycle Drive by Third Eye Blind like a million times again and again to like get myself in that. This is making me really sad. This is making me upset. How do I translate it there? Whether or not it was successful, I don't know. But like I feel like that's the biggest challenge. Trying to relay that emotion in there.
I will say he's successful because I didn't know what song it was that he wrote, and I read his piece.
Thank you.
I think that's exactly it, though. It's I don't expect readers to know every reference to music I make in books, but it's conveying the feeling of the song and the type of music. For instance, I read Night Music by Jen Marie Thorne, and it's about classical music, and I don't know a lot of classical music at all, but she did a great way of describing how the songs felt, and I thought that was really well done. And that's kind of how I work on music is how people feel when they're listening to it, and I hope that to kind of portray that a little bit. You don't need to know the exact pop punk song, just how it feels.
It was for me like one of my writing decisions that I really struggled with Ruin Song was whether or not I was going to write lyrics for my spell songs, because they do they do spells through music, and so I was like, oh, like, do people actually need to hear that? But what I was finding was that I couldn't invoke the kind of emotion with my own lyrical writing that I wanted to, because I'm not a songwriter, and it was coming across really cheesy. So I decided to also kind of focus on the emotion. And also for me, like, there are two senses that I think really strongly invoke feeling in me, and they're auditory and smell. And so I gave all of my songs or all of my mages like a scent signature that went along with their music, so that people, I thought, like when they were listening to the spell songs, they could also like pair them with the scents, because scents also invoke emotion in people. So I was hoping that the pair would achieve that effect.
I don't have a good answer for this one.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Books have always been so interesting to me because it's really an author doing their best to give you all you need to experience five senses with only being able to use usually one, because your audiobooks you'd be hearing them, and physical books you'd be using sight. And so it's always been so interesting with stuff that, like, how do you describe what a cactus smells like? I don't know. It's
interesting because I think the thing about a book is more than to try and describe something. You really want to evoke something in the reader, and how you would choose to use the language, what that evokes in a reader is something else. There's actually a really great It's a nonfiction book. It's a collection of essays called The Natural History of the Senses by Diane Ackerman. And it's just a bunch of personal essays, and it goes through each of the 5 senses plus synesthesia at the very end. And I love these because they're personal essays, but they evoke each of the senses so well. So I don't really get tripped up on trying to describe something, try to completely one-to-one translate what I felt onto the page. And I've done some translation work as well. My mother is an interpreter, and sometimes, she'll give me something to look over, and it's like a first pass translation. It's very literal, and it makes no sense. So the work there is you shouldn't really, or at least I don't really worry too much about being faithful to whatever vision it is in my head, so much as I just want to evoke something in the reader, whether or not they're listening to it or reading it on a page.
JJ, I feel like you have like the most elegant answers for these sort of things.
Really great
I was
answer.
just thinking that.
Whenever I think about like writing the experience and like, taste and sensory stuff, I always think of that movie City of Angels with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan.
I love that movie.
Well, there's this scene, and like, it's admittedly kind of bad, where like Nicolas Cage is like, "What does a pear taste like?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't know how to say it." And she's like, "I just want to know what a pear tastes like to you." And she describes it as like biting into sugary sand, and she goes on this whole thing. And I always think about that like very cheesy scene when it comes to describing taste and sensory stuff, because like
everybody's saying Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, it's just such a, she describes it in such a unique way that I don't think anyone else would, and I think about that like all the time.
Okay, so a next one I've got, if you could see, and you can answer this as yourself or as your main character if you would like, or your character from your stories, Eric and Lauren. If you could see any musical act perform, regardless of if they're currently living or performing and etc., we're ignoring all that, we're pretending time travel or physics doesn't exist, it's fine. Who would you want to see? This could be a band, it could be like an original, like the first time a Mozart piece was played. It could be a musical with the original cast, whatever you want.
So for me, my main character is pretty intense into classical music, and my guess is she would want to listen to Chopin actually perform, because he never performed in public. He was very quiet and didn't do a lot of concerts. And apparently his rubato and like the ways that he would play things might not have been what was actually written down. So I know this is kind of geeky, but like the idea of actually listening to what he actually meant as opposed to what actually has come down to us would be really, really fascinating. But for me, I thought about a lot about this, and I think I would like to go to see the B-52s when their first album came out. Absolutely, because they looked like they had so much fun, and punk shows can be so much fun. So either the B-52s or the Talking Heads. Yeah.
In Battle of the Bands, I'm the stage manager. My character is a stage manager, so she's not a musical person, but she's a theater person who does stagehand stuff and is an actor, but not a great actor. And for her, due to technicality of scenery and her belief in things being very orderly, she would want to go see Hamilton, because that is a very orderly show that is done very precise and crisp. I was able to see it, but not the original cast, so she would totally want to do original cast, all of that. And personally, I'm going to answer this as a mom, because I've seen a lot of the bands I like, not to be like braggy about that, but as a mom, going back, I would love for my daughters to be able to see Yo Gabba Gabba live, because we watched the live show, and my older one's always like, when are they gonna come here so we can meet them? And I'm like, because they don't tour. I mean, the show ended like 9 years ago or something. But that would be it. I would do anything for them to be able to see that show live and see all the bands so they could actually see the Aquabats. And Biz Marquee. It's a weird show. It's so cute.
I think if I could beam myself live, like straight into any London theater right now, that's what I would be doing. I really miss London, and I really miss going to shows like Les Miserables and Phantom of the Opera. And there's just something really magical about seeing those performances on stage as opposed to like even watching the movies. Like I think both of the movie versions of those shows are really good, but it's not the same as like actually having
disagree.
like blow steam in your face and like being experiencing it with a bunch of other people. So that's what I would do. I think my main character would be happy to never see a musical performance again, which I can't, like Eric's laughing because he knows why. But I think like if she, could like have someone sing to her in a very private space, that would probably be her ideal.
Nice. I think with my character in Battle of the Bands, so like his sort of story arc is that he was in like a famous teen punk band, kind of like a 5 Seconds of Summer sort of band, and now is like a nobody and is really beat up about it. And a girl gets on stage at the talent show at the Battle of the Bands and plays his band's hit single, but in this very breathy, sort of indie folky kind of way that he's kind of jealous of. So I think maybe he would go see like the Lumineers if he could go see a band, because I think that's actually what he would like to be able to write. And for me, oh well, they're touring again, so I guess it does. Well, yeah, I'd probably go see Bush. I never got to see Bush live, and I'm a sucker for those alternative rock, like an alternative rock classic. I would like to see them.
My character, I wrote her as sort of a contemporary of Beethoven. And she's had a musical history education as far as like her father has taught her and everything else, but I think she would just want to see whoever else was performing and making a name for themselves in Vienna at the time, which was Beethoven. Mozart had just died. Haydn was still around, so she just kind of would want to be in that scene, I guess. Personally, if I was able to time travel, I would go see the Libertines circa 2002. They are my favorite band of all time. But in a slightly more, well, maybe not now in this time of social distancing, but more achievable goal would be to see Hadestown, which I have been obsessed with. Concept album came out. So I'm just like, go. So that's really what I want to see. I want to see Hadestown.
I really wanted to see Natasha and Pierre when it was on Broadway, and I never got to. And then it ended.
The one I'm actually the most upset about having missed was the Deaf West revival of Spring Awakening.
Oh, same. Oh my gosh.
So sad.
I got to see
my favorite musicals, and it's the Deaf West. It looked amazing.
Michael Arden, who directed, he's such a genius. He did the Once in the Silent revival too, which I got to see, and that was so good. And then he's also like so talented as a singer. Like he was Quasimodo when they did the Hunchback musical.
Oh.
I have issues with that Hunchback musical because I really love the original German version.
Oh yeah. And
they changed a lot of things around that I was like not happy with.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know the German version at all, so
it's really good. It's really good.
Okay, so I didn't send you all this question before, but I was thinking about it. It's something that I used to ask a lot when I was first starting out moderating, and so I'm sort of bringing it back, sort of my retro. So if your book was made into a movie and you were asked if to contribute one choice of a song to the soundtrack,
oh wow.
what would you want it to be? It doesn't have to be thematic to the plot. It can be like the end credit song.
Oh, an end credit song.
It can be any point in time in the movie. And you could even say, I would want a song that was an original song composed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Whatever you want.
Oh.
I like to make you think on your feet.
I know.
Of an existing song, maybe Symphony by Clean Bandit would be my choice. Probably for one of the end scenes in which like there's like a lot of violence in a performance, which I think like especially if you've watched the music video for Symphony, like you can kind of see. But I also like if I could have anything, you know, anyone alive or dead would want an original song composed by Andrew Lloyd Webber for my movie.
That'd be great.
I don't know, with Battle of the Bands, if it was made into like a movie or TV show or something, there are two bands that I like a lot that have they're these pop punk bands that whenever they would play live, they would open with these like songs that implied things were about to get started. So there's one band called Farewell, and they have a song called Let's Get Started, which like kick things off, and like it always felt like the start of a show. And then there was this band called The Academy Is that had this song called Attention.
I know that one.
And I feel like that would be a really great like opening song, especially if it's a Battle of the Bands concert where everyone's getting on stage.
I don't know. I haven't thought about this. I think the bad part of being the stage manager for Battle of the Bands is that I don't have the musical influences. I like Battle of the Bands because it's about so many different aspects of high school life in a band thing. I would want a cover, though the original is beyond good, of but like a cover that fit the style of the music played in the book of Kids in America from the Clueless soundtrack, because I love that song. And I think that would be really fun for our kids.
I think Belle and Sebastian would be good.
Oh,
Yeah, because there's a lot of high school-y wistfulness in Belle and Sebastian, and if you go through like the record liners, there's all these like photo shoots of people in vintage clothing, and I could totally see my main character wanting to get dressed up like that and walking around like with books and like being really I guess twee. Yeah.
you know, well, I brought up my playlist for my books because I was like, what did I even add on here? I think for an end credit song, I mean, because my book is set in the late 18th century, but like an end credit song, I think I would want something by Florence Welch.
Oh, okay.
From Florence and the Machine.
Oh, that would fit so well. Yes, I love it. So we've talked so much about music. What were some sort of other influences for your books outside of music?
I mean, Battle of the Bands, I think the number one influence was me and Lauren being stuck in an airport at 4 a.m. after a conference. And her being like, what do you think of this?
Yes, Eric.
It was just
I'm
us.
never going to work on
We
an
were both in
anthology
bands.
again.
Yeah, I know.
We had nothing else to talk to. There were very few people in the airport, and we're like, we were both in bands in high school. Remember that? Remember Battle of the Bands? That was cool. Let's do this.
Yeah, so just, being up late. And then also, I don't know, Battle of the Bands events when I was growing up, it felt like such like a key part of the high school experience, along with like going to prom and like homecoming and things like that. It felt like such a fun thing to focus on.
Yeah, and it was. I think for both of us, being part of that scene was really fun and bringing it back to life. And when we were contacting authors for it, everyone had a story too, which was really cool. Like everyone has a memory of a Battle of the Bands or something like that. And I think that universal feeling was what inspired it.
So the original influence, music was a secondary thing. It was added later because the biggest inspiration for my book is the movie Labyrinth, the Jim Henson movie with David Bowie and a bunch of Muppets. So that was the main influence. And then the music sort of came in later. Yeah, that's kind of the most obvious. I mean, when the main antagonist of my book is the Goblin King. So I wrote kind of for fun, I annotated my books, and there's a lot of musical theater influence in there as well. There's some direct references to the Phantom of the Opera in my book. The Sound of Music as well kind of has a big kind of influence. There's like, it was a kitchen sink of everything that I liked, you know, creepy, spooky, gothic folk tales, David Bowie, music, Mozart, you know.
So Ruin Song is kind of a loose Phantom of the Opera retelling. So Phantom of the Opera was a big inspiration for me, more the book though than the musical and any film version. Also, like having visited like a lot of the French palaces of Versailles, like there's a little bit of a French revolutionary aspect to the book. And I studied that when I was in graduate school. So a little bit of that came into play too.
For me, one of the major influences was Sport and a Pastime, which is kind of this MFA book that I didn't do an MFA, but some of my writing pals did, and they were like, "Oh, you want to learn how to write sex scenes? Like, I should think you should read Sport and a Pastime, and because they have the best sex scenes. That book has the best sex scenes." And so I read it, and I agree. So I read that book a lot. Yeah.
Okay, and then so one of my goals in just life right now is making sure that authors are being talked about and talked to, and the books are being mentioned. So are there any 2020 releases that you have read and loved already, or that you are really looking forward to and can't wait to get your hands on?
Also, Rachel, I think you're really good at making sure we're talking about our books.
Yeah.
Because you will be like, I'm going to talk about da 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 da, and then not plug your own book, and then you're like, I have this cute kid who, like, yeah, he's adorable, and like this cute corgi, yeah, again, cute, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, here's my chinchilla, and I'm like, you have a chinchilla? You never talk about your. If I had a chinchilla, like, I would never shut up about my chinchilla. He's mittens. Like,
Mittens. He does need more love. I agree.
Anyway, don't read the comments. Make Eric post pictures of his chinchilla. Then tweet.
I just started reading The Lightness of Hands by Jeff
Garvin?
Garland? Yeah. I'm not done with it yet, but I really love the hook there, where it's this teen girl whose father is like a disgraced, like David Copperfield-esque magician, and she's on this sort of well-meaning but misguided quest to make him famous again, in order for their family to afford like the kind of medication that they need. So there's this like mental health story. There's this kid parenting the parent story, which I love those kind of stories, because that was like all my friends growing up when I was younger. And I'm just really into it. And then Verona Comics by Jennifer Dugan is a lot of fun. Like sort of You've Got Mail. No, shoot. What is the one with the bookshop? That is You've Got Mail.
It is You've Got Mail.
Yeah, okay.
Remake of The Shop Around the Corner, I think.
Yeah, shop around the corner sort of situation with the comic book stores. This is a lot of fun.
I'm really behind in my ARC reading this year. I think mostly because the pandemic, I've been so distractible that I've been mostly reading audiobooks, which I do think are real books, but that's a totally different conversation. But like books that I'm really looking forward to this year, The Dark Tide, which is an FF book, which I think is supposed to be about two evil queens, which I'm really into. I really want to read The Queen of Coin and Whispers. Cemetery Boys is I think the only arc that I've actually read from this year so far, which is excellent. And it's about a boy who summons, or a trans brujo who summons a ghost accidentally, and they kind of fall in love, and it's adorable. I also just finished a 2020 book, which was amazing because I got it on audio, The Blood Countess which I think came out in January, but it was awesome. Really dark, but if you're into like serial killer women from the 15th century, like it might be your thing. So
I would have to plug the book that I really love this year so far is The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. I have a really long history with this book because I read it on submission when I was an editorial assistant 10 years ago.
Wow.
Over 10 years ago. Yeah. So this was the book that I fell in love with, and it was the one that made me reach out to Marie and just be like, I'm sorry I can't buy this book right now, but will you be my friend? But it really it's I mean, unsurprisingly, if you guys have read my books, it's about siblings. It's about the Mozart siblings, Wolfgang and his older sister Maria Anna, or Nonnerl as she was known, and they were on tour across Central Europe as child prodigies. And it's really about a sibling relationship, but also during this time, Mozart and Wolfgang and Nonnerl created this fantasy land called the Kingdom of Back and Forth. And it's magical and beautiful. And it's about a woman who really wants, a young girl really, but a young girl who really also is a talented composer in her own right, but history is going to forget her because she's a woman. So it's just, I love this book so much. And I'm really glad it's finally out in the world.
Nice. One of the books I'm looking forward to reading is Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko, and it's a YA fantasy, kind of an epic about a girl who's raised by kind of like a mysterious, estranged mother who sends her off to try to become part of like a royal council in a faraway fantasy land. And it's really more about loyalty and looking for a sense of belonging, but like what are you willing to do in order to find that sense of belonging? So I'm really looking forward to it. I love N.K. Jemisin, and N.K. Jemisin was tweeting about it, and which made me even more excited about it. So now I'm like, I gotta read this book.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to make a list. So I have not read, but it just came out. This Is My Rain in Love by I.W. Gregorio. And I mean, I loved her first book. I can't wait to read this one. Problem of having children is you can't read as much, but I have it and I'm very excited to read it. When We Were Infinite by Kelly Lloyd Gilbert, also like adore her books. Very excited for this one to come out. I believe it's in October. And then my forever plug is We Are Not From Here by Jenny Torres Sanchez. I read it. I was able to blurb it, so I'm a little biased. And it's stunning. It's about teens crossing into America from Mexico and everything that they face along the way. And she did an insane amount of research into it, and it's gorgeous. It made me sob about 99% of the time. So highly recommend it.
Yes, that is my, if it doesn't win the Prince, I will continue to be mad.
I would be too.
I will be mad because I'm always mad at the award results, but I will continue to be mad. Oh, it's so good.
Stunning. Oh, I'm so glad you liked it.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm like gonna cry thinking about it. So I gotta think about other things. So we'll do one last question. Are you guys able to tell us anything a little bit about what you are working on next? And if the answer is no, that's okay.
I guess I'll go first. I'm working on the first book in a 4-book series. The series is tentatively titled The Guardians of Dawn. And it is inspired by Sailor Moon and fairy tales, and it's set in a fantasy version of East Asia. It's kind of a really terrible pitch to give people, but each book is a fairy tale, basically. And so that's what I'm working on, the first book in that series, which has no title because I'm really bad at titling things. If I had my way, everything would just be submitted as untitled, and then marketing will take care of it.
Well, my next one, it's called You Can Go Your Own Way. It comes out next year.
Nice.
It is a YA novel about a 70s rock obsessed teen who is running his father's failing pinball arcade. And a girl whose dad is a virtual reality coffee shop tech mogul. And the two of them get snowed in together in the falling apart pinball arcade. And it's this sort of enemies to lovers rom-com because the girl's father wants to take over the arcade space.
Well, I'm still sort of working on my 2020 release in a way because I just got Past Pages today. So that's what I spent today doing was Past Pages. I'm also working on both a high fantasy and a contemporary fantasy that I kind of like yo-yo back and forth on and will hopefully finish very soon and then be able to say more about them. So.
I got nothing. I'm just working on Battle of the Bands right now.
Good. We love it.
I'm working on a novel about a girl who, actually a woman whose sister dies, and she doesn't know her sister very well, but feels like she needs to learn more about her in order to come to peace with it.
Okay.
It's kind of dark.
Yeah.
It gets dark. As you can imagine, I'm working on it very hard because these are hard enough times. So I'm like, I don't want to. Nope. I'm gonna work on something else.
Okay. So one last time, just for a little clarity's sake, if we can go down a non-existent line, and just reiterate your name, your book, and where people can find you online, that would be great. Eric is first in my line of sight, so if you want to go.
Okay, well, hi, Eric Smith. My latest book is Don't Read the Comments, and my next one with Lauren is Battle of the Bands. And you can find me online with the website ericsmithrocks.com.
I'll go off that. I'm Lauren Gibaldi. My current book is Battle of the Bands with Eric. My other books were The Night We Said Yes, Autofocus, and This Tiny Perfect World. And you can find me under laurengibaldi.com at all the Lauren Gibaldis. It's Gibaldi with a G.
I'm Julia Ember. I'm the author of The Seafarer's Kiss duology and my next book, which is Ruin Song, which is the one we've been talking about. You can find me at julia-ember.com or on Twitter at jules_chronicle.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Salaysay, and you can find me at cynthiasalaysay.com. And my first book is coming out next month, and it's called Private Lessons.
And I'm Jae-Jones. I go by JJ. I'm the author of Winter Song and Shadow Song and the forthcoming Guardians of the Dawn series. Date is to be determined at this point. You can find me at sjjones.com, and SJ is my website. I should probably update that.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for tuning into this panel. If you're looking for more panels like it, make sure you check out the All By Myself playlist on our YouTube page. It'll tell you all of the different panels that you're able to watch.